Sold to the Billionaire Alpha, written by Joanna J., narrated by Nikki Delgado and David Sterling. Chapter 1. My heart shattered as I gazed at the photo. Tears streamed down my cheeks. I had left him because he abused me about 3 years. I had finally had enough and left him. Just 6 weeks after I left, he was with another. The photo showed him snuggling up with a girl heavily plastered with makeup. It was the way he showed her off. He had never done that with me. He had kept me hidden, saying if I tweaked my looks this way or that way, then I would be stunning. Then he would claim me publicly. Then he would consider marrying me. I put my phone aside. The illuminated photo disappeared as the screen went black. I gazed at myself in the mirror. Was I the monster he professed me to be? My dark brown loose ringlets fell down to my mid-back. My hair had been the only thing he claimed to like about me, or at least the only thing I remembered him ever complimenting. He had said I always looked afraid. How was I supposed to look? I bit my lower lip. I was not looking forward to work the next day. How would I function? I was a doctor in the emergency department of a public hospital on the southern side of the Iris Isle, the island where I lived. I had started medical school at 18, as was possible on our island. Thus, at 25, I was already qualified and working. It was the final day of my 6 months contract. I was informed that my contract would not be renewed. I had amassed so much debt due to student loans. How would I repay my debts? My father's gambling addiction had pushed me further into debt as I assisted him in paying off loan sharks. I was still made to work my final shift. It was dark when my shift ended. Lightning illuminated the hill that the hospital was perched on. I picked my way carefully down the hillside in the rain. Thunder boomed in my ears. I slipped in the grass and slid the last few feet down the hill. My knees and palms hit the wet concrete of the pavement. I winced in pain. Cars rushed past. I was soaked. I had forgotten my umbrella at home. I ran along the pavement towards the taxi stand. The stand was empty. A chill crept through me. I felt uneasy. I looked around. No one was there, but I felt I was being watched. A car stopped in front of me. The window was lowered to reveal a pair of cold, grey eyes, so light they almost appeared white. And then I heard a male voice.
Get in.
It was just a car driven by a stranger. Perhaps it was the heartbreak, the crippling debt, the unemployment, or just the rain. But whatever it was, something made me get into the car. The window was raised and the car door clicked shut, locking me in. The man with the bloodshot, cold grey eyes had a crooked nose and thin mouth. He glanced at me and laughed nervously.
You were easy to find.
What? I had goosebumps erupting over my skin.
Don't bother causing a commotion or asking me endless questions.
I was silent. The car door was locked. I had a blade there. We used them to cut stitches. I unwrapped it. He seemed to hear that impossibly soft sound, even amidst the rain, thunder, and the blowing of the car's air conditioning. His eyes caught mine in the rearview mirror. He narrowed his eyes and said,
Don't even think about it.
The downpour was so heavy, I could scarcely see in front of us. We arrived at huge iron gates. My heart sank. It was now or never. I could not allow myself to go beyond those gates. Who knew what horrors awaited me? Look out! I shrieked as loudly and convincingly as I could muster.
What?
He yelped, mashing the brakes, causing the car to come screeching to a halt. I stabbed him in the eye nearer to me with the tiny blade. Blood spurted from the socket. He let out a blood-curdling scream. I launched myself at the controls on his side, pressing the button that unlocked all the doors. I heard the clicking of the locks opening and rushed out my door into the rain, slamming it behind me on the man's outstretched fingers. He screamed again. I ran away from the iron gates, not sure where I was. This area was so unfamiliar. We were in an affluent neighborhood. The houses were far apart, with neatly manicured lawns, currently being battered by the heavy rains. Elegant flower beds were being reduced to streams of mud. I ran down the street as fast as I could. I spotted a guard booth. I ran to it, alerting the sleeping guard. The man awoke with a start and literally snarled at me. I recoiled, shocked at how animalistic he was. He stared at me. "I need help. This man is trying to kidnap me." The man with the grey eyes was clutching his bleeding eye and running towards me. The guard sprang out of his chair. The guard grabbed me. I screamed, thrashing about in his arms. The grey-eyed man reached us and took a cloth from his jeans pocket. He stuffed it in my face, muffling my cries. The smell of chloroform hitting me and darkness enveloped me. I awoke in a cage, not a cell, a literal cage fashioned for some overgrown bird. There was a shut-wire door just big enough to fit through if it were opened. I'd been stuffed unceremoniously through that door by the looks of the scratches on my hands. The cage was in a dimly lit cellar. All around me were other girls in other cages. Most of them were sleeping or just unconscious, probably chloroformed just like I had been. I called to a red-haired, freckled girl near me. She was one of the few who were awake. She regarded me with her fearful green eyes. I asked, trying not to dissolve into tears. "Hey, do you know where we are?" I needed to think to be able to plan an escape. "In the holding bay," she said in a tone that was much more knowledgeable than I had expected. I gripping the bars of my cage and said, "Do you know why we're here?" "For the auction," the girl said matter-of-factly. "I'm Orchid," I said, hoping introducing myself would make her more willing to talk. She seemed to know a lot. "Rose." "We're both flowers." "We've been plucked." She smiled sadly and joked, reaching for humour in the darkest of times. I instantly liked her. "Hopefully we don't wilt." I smiled and took a deep breath. Then I asked, and afraid of the answer, "Who would buy us?" She looked at me strangely. She came closer. I noticed she had a thick silver collar or choker of some sort that seemed to be irritating the skin on her neck. Her eyes widened. "You're human," she whispered, looking at my bare neck. Chills coursed through me. "Of course I am. What else is there?" The girl laughed madly, hysterically, as if driven insane for a moment. She regained her composure. "I'm not, and neither are the buyers." "What are they?" I breathed. My blood ran cold through my veins and arteries, chilling me to the core. Was she trying to terrify me? Was this a weird joke? Now was not the time for pranks. And then I heard she said simply, "Werewolves." It was my turn to laugh. I giggled, then I laughed more loudly, my shoulders shaking. "That's not funny," I said, despite still laughing. The same madness Rose had was seeping into me. "Orchid, this is an auction where werewolves buy girls. The buyers are the richest and most powerful wolves, pack leaders of the biggest and most brutal packs. The girls for sale are rarely picked at random. Most have been specially ordered by a particular alpha for meeting some requirement or the other. The girls are usually from small defenseless packs or poor families, or they're rogues or runaways. Most of us are she-wolves. I've heard of humans being sold too, but you're the first human I've ever met." She had the most vivid imagination even in her madness. I looked at her in amazement. I played along and asked, "Rose, how long have you been here?" "A week, maybe." My heart plummeted. A door above a flight of stone steps opened, allowing more lights into the cellar. I recognized the grey-eyed man. I glared at him. He had an eye patch on. He surveyed the room as he descended the steps. He spotted me and smiled maliciously. He approached my cage and said,
"Payback's a bitch, and so are you."
I glared at him, conveying every ounce of hatred in me. He opened the cage, pulling me roughly through the somewhat narrow opening. I was screeched as one of the stray wires scraped my cheek. I was ready to fight him, or so I thought. As he pulled me to my feet, I found myself unsteady. My legs gave out underneath me. He let me fall on the concrete with a thud. I groaned, trying to get to my knees. I managed to kneel and sit up, panting from the effort. He was cackled, a wicked grin plastered on his face.
"Not so high and mighty now, are you?"
I silently prayed for some miracle to take me from this place.